All right, good evening, good afternoon, whatever you want to call it. I'm Chef Jeremy. Today we are going to be making some chicken spring rolls. So we're going to make them more Vietnamese style as opposed to like Chinese fried egg rolls. These are going to be Vietnamese, like rice paper egg rolls. So I've got some spring roll wrappers here. They feel like hard still, so we'll warm those up. But those can be tricky to find, but I know Walmart has them. Sometimes Asian markets have them and stuff too. But if you are forced to just get the regular wonton egg roll wrappers, you can make those too. And you can just bake them in the oven as opposed to frying them, and they won't be quite as greasy. But today we're just going to go with the rice paper. Also, we're going to need some ground chicken. If you want to use chicken breast or chicken thighs or whatever, just chop it real thin. Try to mince it if you can, or really small chunks. Just that way it doesn't tear up your wrap while you're trying to fold it. Also, we're going to need a head of cabbage. This is a really big head of cabbage, but no matter what, you're going to end up with some leftover cabbage. So definitely find some ways to use that as well. We're going to need a couple shallots. These are also pretty big, so we might just need one. I've got a few cloves of garlic here, a little can of sliced water chestnuts. I've never been able to find just fresh, regular water chestnuts, so the canned ones will do the same thing, and they're already sliced, so that's another easy step. Carrots, I actually have some diced carrots as leftovers that I had. But if you do want to use whole carrots, you can just grind them on like a cheese grater, or in my case, I just have them really finely diced. And you can use any carrots you want. These are actually chopped up baby carrots because we just have a bunch of those. But yeah, just shred them on a cheese grater is the best way to do it, or you can just buy a bag of the pre-shredded carrots. We also have a little bit of soy sauce, and we're going to use some coconut oil for our chicken, which I might not even need to use any because it's got a little bit of fat left in it. So as far as stuff we're going to need, just a big bowl to mix your stuff in. I've got a nice plate with a damp towel on it for my egg roll wrappers. A pan to cook my stuff in, and then this I'm just going to fill with warm water to warm up my little egg roll wraps. So just a nice round pan or something big enough that they can fit into. All right, so we'll get started first. We're going to use our ground chicken. So what I'm going to do, I'll get my pan warmed up to like a nice medium high heat. And then I'm going to use a separate knife. Not that. There it is. So you don't have to do anything with this stuff. We're just going to cut it open. And it should have like a nice little plastic thing on the bottom of it. Just make sure you don't get that in there. Just sucks up all the liquid that's sitting in the pan. And we'll take this and just put it right into the pan. I'm using a nice nonstick pan, so it's okay if it's not hot right away, but if you're using any sort of steel bottomed or aluminum pans, you want to make sure they're nice and hot before you throw your meat in there. Give the hands a good wash. Get all that chicken off of there. All right, so we're just gonna let that chicken cook until all the pink is gone. It's a little easier to cook than a whole chicken. Obviously, you could tell a little easier with the ground chicken. And we're gonna cook it for a while, so there's really no worries about it being undercooked. We're just gonna give it a stir every couple minutes. But for now, we'll start with our big head of cabbage. And the best way to do this, you can find the bottom there. So you just want to set it right on the bottom. If it's a good even one like this, it should sit. And we're just going to cut it right in half down the middle. And you want to have a nice big sturdy knife for this. That way you don't poke yourself or anything. So now we have another half of it. We're just going to lay it down on the flat side and then here's that stem. I'm just going to cut that stem in half again, so we get a nice quarter. And then all we're probably going to need for a single recipe of this is a quarter. We might not even need all this. It's pretty big, but if you do want to make a bunch of these in advance, you can stick them in the freezer and just reheat them later. But we're going to make fresh ones today, so I don't want to make too many. And then what we're going to do is take it. You can see where the stem kind of goes about halfway up. So we're just going to lay it down and kind of angle your knife to just cut that stem out of there. And that'll get rid of the nice big thick piece that's sitting in the middle there. And you'll have some like thicker veins along the side, but those are perfectly fine. We can eat those. So next we're just going to slice it super thin, as thin as we can get it. Just going down the length of it. Keep it on that flat side and it'll be super easy to cut. Like I said, we're probably not going to need this full quarter even, but you can add this stuff to salads or soups and other things like that. It's a great hearty green to really cook a lot. It can handle a lot of heat and cooking, so it's not going to be like lettuce where it's really fragile and gets all wilty. But then once you get to that butt end of it where it's kind of weird to cut, you can just kind of lay it on the widest, flattest side and keep going. Until you run out of stuff, and then you should have like that nice chunky piece. Pretty much everything on the end of that is just going to be big chunks. So we can just get rid of that. Or once again, if you're going to do something like a soup, you can stick it in there and it'll cook down really well. But for this, that's basically all we need. You don't have to chop it any smaller because when it cooks, it's going to shrink a little bit. So we want about a cup of it for the recipe that we're doing. I've got a little more than a cup here, but I'll just put most of it in there. I think I've got a little more than a cup of carrots, so we should be okay. And then I'm just going to go through and pick out these bigger chunks, just because I do have a little extra, so I don't need these big meaty pieces in there. But this stuff's not going to cook for very long once it does get in the pan, so these bigger ones just won't get as soft as the nice fine top layers. But I think that should be good. And then with the carrots, like I said, I have some already ready to go, but if you have a whole carrot, you can just peel it. You don't even have to peel it if you don't want to, but if you prefer to, you can peel it and just shred it on a cheese grater. What I did is I just diced them up into really small little sticks and cubes. The idea is just to get them as small and thin as possible, so that way when they cook, they get nice and wilty and moldable, and they're not going to poke holes in the wrappers. But you can also just buy the pre-shredded ones, and those are perfect. I would cut one live here, but this was the last of my carrots, so it should be pretty easy. Just give them a nice good chop into little sticks. We'll mix that up a little bit. And then once your chicken starts to get a good sizzle going and you can hear it cooking, you're just going to kind of mash it up with a spatula. You want it into smaller little pieces. If you just let it cook, you'll basically have like a hamburger made out of chicken. You want to mash it up as much as you can. I'm just going to take this extra cabbage and hang on to it for later. If you soak your cabbage in like some vinegar and chili sauce or something, you can make like pickled cabbage or kimchi or something. Kimchi is like fermented, so that takes a little more science. But if you just want to pickle it, it's just some sugar and vinegar and hot water. And you can pickle a whole bunch of cabbage to put on your burgers and hot dogs and stuff. For now, we'll keep an eye on this chicken. I'm just gonna season the chicken with like a pinch of salt, not a whole lot. We are gonna put soy sauce in a little later, so I need literally just a little pinch. And it just kind of helps to season as you go. That way your chicken's got the flavor and then the veggies will have the flavor rather than everything being kind of bland all the way at the end and then adding soy sauce. If you season as you go, it's just going to help everything taste a little better, but you don't have to overdo it. So we're going to take one of our shallots here, and then what we can do is just chop the top off where that little piece of skin is hanging off on the end. Pull out that outer layer of skin that's nice and papery. And then we'll remove the little bottom end here. And you should have probably a good layer or two of the thicker skin. It's going to be a little more moist, so you just kind of want to pull that off all the way around. It's just going to be a weird texture, so it should peel off relatively easily. And once you get to that nice, good, thick center, you're good. And a lot of these shallots will be in two pieces. So once you pull off that outer layer of skin, you'll find that it's actually two little shallots in there. And then with these, what we're going to do is just slice them real thin. And then we'll just give them a nice little rough chop the other way. We're just going for a nice little rough mince here. And then I'll do the same thing with the other one. Flip out of there. There we go. Just go back and give them another little rough chop. You don't have to get too crazy with it, just enough to kind of break up those rings a little bit. And then we'll throw those in there. That's going to be about a 1/4 cup of shallots. They're not going to be as potent as onions, so we can use a little more. And we don't have to worry about chopping up a 1/4 of an onion and saving the rest. Onions don't hold as well as like cabbage does. So if I can avoid using a whole onion for something, that's perfect. What I'm doing is I'm just going through and chopping this up. It's going to kind of look like breakfast sausage or, ground hamburger, but it doesn't mash up on its own quite as well, just because there's a lot more protein holding it together and not a whole lot of fat in it. So it's not going to fall apart as easily. So you just got to kind of go through and match it up till you get some nice smaller little chunks. All right, we'll let that stuff cook for a little bit more. There's still some pink on the top side, so mash it up, stir it up, get those pink sides in the heat. Next, we're going to take a little bit of garlic. I just have 2 little cloves here. Kind of the same thing as the shallots. I'm just going to cut it real thin. And then go back and chop it up a little smaller the other way. We don't have to go super tiny, but If you have a jar of minced garlic, that'll certainly work, about a tablespoon of that. If you have one of those garlic mashers that turns it into like a garlic paste, I don't know if I would use that just because we are going to cook this stuff all at the same time and the garlic cooks a little quicker than everything else. So having it a little chunky will keep it from burning so fast. And it'll give it a nice texture too and keep it a little thicker. All right, and it seems like I'm doing a lot of mashing back there, which is kind of what we want. We want those really small, fine little pieces, just because, like I said, you don't want to break the wrapper when you break it up or roll it up. So next we'll do our water chestnuts. Turn that down just a little bit. Can opener. What I like to do is go almost all the way around the can, but I like to leave a little bit of the lid on, and then I can just hold it and dump out all that water that's in there. Just give it a good little shake. There we go. And then I can peel the lid up. And we're going to do about a quarter cup of these, maybe a little more. We could do like a third cup. Just going to pull these out. I would say this is probably about a half cup can. Let's see what it say, 8 ounces. That's about a cup instead. So we'll do about half of this, maybe a little less. We're just going to give these a good rough chop. And you can buy these in the can. You can buy them whole, or you can buy them diced, or you can buy them sliced. I just like the sliced ones. Diced ones are a little bigger than I like, so it's just harder to chop up cubes than it is to chop up nice flat little slices. But these are super tender, so they're really easy to chop. And they're just going to add a nice nutty flavor to the whole thing. Little pile here. All right. And then we're just going to take these and add them to our big bowl of veggies here. All right, and then I'll take my can and just close up that sharp lid. What that does is, if I do end up using the whole can of then when I go to throw the can away, I can just close the lid like this and I don't have to worry about it falling into the trash can and cutting it up or forgetting it somewhere and cutting myself up. There we go. All right. So our chicken is pretty much fully cooked. I don't see any pink in there anymore, which is what we're going for. It looks like we've got everything. Once again, I'm going to add just a little pinch of salt to this stuff. There. And we're going to stir it up, and that salt's going to help draw out a little of the extra moisture and just combine all those good flavors together. Just give this a good stir, make sure everything's nice and mixed up. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to throw it all in the pan and continue cooking and mixing, so we don't have to worry too much. that. So I'm just going to take my nice big bowl of mix here, and I'll add it straight to the pan. I got the heat turned back up to like a nice medium high heat. We just want to saute these veggies and stuff for like 2 or 3 minutes until they get nice and soft. Um, so it helps to have a nice, good big pan that you can use. All right, and we'll let those cook for a couple minutes. They cook real quick, so we don't have to sit here and wait on them. I'm just going to clean up this board so that we can use it to roll our little wrapper. Straight into the sink. Perfect. All right, get this nice and dried off. Get any little chunkies, little bits of stuff off of there so it's nice and smooth. This is the other benefit to using a ground chicken. We don't have to cut up any chicken. Don't have to wash the board or anything. I can just give it a good wipe off and we're good to go. So just keep stirring up, let it sit for a minute, stir it up, let it sit for a minute. We'll let it cook for about another minute and a half or so. We don't need any coconut oil or can openers done. So the inspiration for this dish came from the Bluey cookbook. I don't know if any of you guys are out there watching Bluey, but my kids love it. And we got the Bluey cookbook and made some regular spring rolls last week. So I figured let's see how we can make them healthy. And this is the way to go. So what we're going to do is get our dish, whatever we're using, just fill it with some hot water, some warm water. It doesn't necessarily have to be hot, but we want it at about like 95, 100 degrees or so. If you stick your finger in and you don't feel a temperature change, that's perfect. That means it's the body temperature, which is pretty warm. So we should be good. Let that sit there for a sec. All right, so now that everything's getting nice and wilty and the veggies are softening up, just gonna add a few tablespoons of soy sauce. Perfect. All right, and we're just gonna let that sauce kind of thicken up and reduce a little bit and coat everything. I have to be able to put it right back in the bowl here. All right, so I got my bowl here. What I'm gonna do is pour this nice hot mixture out of this pan, because we don't want to have this pan on the counter. It's gonna be a little too hot to work with, but our soy sauce should be nice and cooked into everything. It's got a good smell to it. Perfect. And then I'm just gonna put this in the fridge for a few minutes. Turn off that heat. All right, and then we'll need some paper towels. Okay, so I've got my little pan of nice warm water here. I'm just gonna take one of these sheets and put it in here, get it nice and submerged. You wanna leave it in there for about 15 to 20 seconds, or depending on how warm your water is, long enough to make these sheets nice and soft and pliable. That's probably about 10 seconds there. And it's already starting to get nice and soft. I don't know if you've ever worked with like gelatin or anything, but it's gonna feel kind of like gelatin, and the edges are gonna get soft before anything else. So we just wanna make sure that center is nice and soft too. So there we go. We went from a nice crispy pasta cracker to one of these. I'm just gonna lay this out onto this nice damp paper towel and try to unfold it as much as you can. They're not really fragile, but they are really flimsy, I guess. They're really bendy and they'll get really soft. So what I'm gonna do is just try to flatten it out as well as I can. It's hard to see, but I just got it nice on my flat plate here. And then I think just for the sake of doing it this way, we'll do one at a time. So this damp paper towel just helps it get rid of the extra moisture that's on it, but also will keep it from sticking. So it might be a little tough to see just because it's so clear, but I want to try to roll it out as best as I can. Get it nice and flat again. They are a little tough to work with. They're going to be sticky, which is what we want. So that's about as good as I can get it as far as flatness goes. Okay, then I got my big bowl of mixed stuff. It's gonna work a little better if you let it cool down for a bit. Obviously, I'm not gonna sit here for 10 minutes and wait for this to cool off, but what you wanna do is get about a quarter cup or so, or a few tablespoons. Start with less on the first one or two of them that you roll, because if you overfill it, you risk ripping it and then you don't get anything. But if you underfill it, you just have a small one. So what I like to do is make a nice line with about an inch on the side. So it's hard to see once again, but there's about an inch of the paper here. So what I'm gonna do is fold the sides up until I touch the food. I guess tuck the food in just a little bit. The filling food. And then I'm gonna grab the back end of it and tuck it all the way over the top of it. Okay, and then it should stick to itself pretty well. So then we're just gonna roll it up. Oh, yep, see, and I filled it too much. So we get a ripped one. That's okay. I think I might have soaked it a little too long. So we'll try this one again. And these rice papers can be a little tricky just because they're really flimsy and you gotta work with them before they get cooled off. And you wanna make sure they're cooked long enough that they're not gonna be crunchy. But like I said, it also helps if your filling is cooled off, because with it being hot, it's just cooking them a little more. There we go. Let's get the side that's still a little crunchy. And this water's cooled off a little bit, so that might be a little better. It's probably about room temperature-ish, or I guess about 80 degrees or so. All right, then I'm gonna go to my paper towel. Just let it drip off a little bit of that extra water on top. All right, and then we're gonna set it back down in the middle. This one feels a little better. It's not quite as flimsy, so I'll do a little bit less filling on this one. Once again, I've left myself some room on the edges. And we're gonna fold those edges in and then grab that bottom side and roll it tight. But you don't wanna go too tight or you'll rip it. There we go. And then you have a nice, good egg roll. So let's do one more just for a little practice since we ripped one up. So I'll count this time. Let's see. It's completely submerged in the water. We got 1, 2, about 20 seconds or so, and it's a little crispy on the edges. I think this time I'm going to leave it a little more firm. Here we go. So we've got a nice soft side, but this top side feels really good. It's got a little bit of structure to it. Move the good one over there. Whoop. And just try to lay it out. This is why it's nice to have a good clean board. You don't want to be working with little chunks of chicken sticking to the bottom and stuff. But there we go. This one's probably the best looking one so far. So once again, we'll grab a nice 1/4 cup scoop. That seemed to be perfect on that last one. Spread it out a little bit. And this mix should be good enough that you have some chicken and all your veggies in every bite. Once again, we'll just fold one side up, another side up, and you don't have to pull it or anything, just right on top where the food is at the edges. And we'll grab our back end here and tuck it all the way up over the food filling. I keep calling it food. And then once you have it tucked, then you can kind of tighten it up a little bit. You might have a little bit of looseness in there, but they're gonna stiffen up and firm up a little bit as they cool. And that is about it. Then what you can do is get a little dipping sauce, like some chili oil or chili sauce, sriracha, soy sauce, barbecue sauce, whatever you want. And one serving will be 4 of these little guys. Since we're using the rice paper, there's really not a whole lot to the rice paper, but if you're using the wontons, you're gonna get a ton of carbs out of those. So you can comfortably eat 4 of these and maybe hit 600 calories, and that's if you really stuff them full. But if you just keep them like this with about a 1/4 cup of filling in each one, you should be well under that mark. And if you can't eat all 4, that's even better. You filled up on 400 calories instead. So that is about it. And now they're good. See how they look on a plate.